Beneath Nevada's scorching sun and dust-laced wind lie secrets older than the Silver Rush, etched in basalt, hidden in caves, buried in silence. These aren't tourist tales or myths for the campfire. They're real, ancient mysteries science still can't untangle. Are you ready to unearth them? Where are you listening from? And what desert winds sweep past your window tonight? This is Unmapped Mysteries, and Nevada is not what it seems. Just outside Fallon, Nevada lies Grimes Point, a place where visitors expect a dusty walk past simple rock scratches. But those who linger see more. Massive basalt boulders, carved with abstract spirals, maze-like etchings, and humanoid forms, none of which match modern tribal styles. Archaeologists date the site to over 8,000 years old, possibly older, predating known settlement patterns. Some believe this area once held a ceremonial complex, now swallowed by time and erosion. The nearby hidden cave reveals further clues: storage pits, tools, and inexplicable fire-blackened ceilings miles from the current shoreline. Who lived here before the desert took it? The carvings suggest astronomical alignment, seasonal rituals, and encoded messages lost to time. Every year, sand exposes more, yet answers never follow. Visitors walk trails beside these ancient expressions, but few realize they're tracing footsteps not just of humans, but perhaps of a civilization that had its own myths, its own gods, and vanished without a trace. Beneath the emerald blue waters of Pyramid Lake, a remnant of ancient Lake Lahontan, divers and sonar scans have found odd structures resting silently in the depths. Angular stone stacks, unnatural rock arrangements, and what some have likened to steps or platforms sit submerged far below recreational boating routes. The pyramid-shaped tufa formations above water are already striking, sacred to the Paiute tribe, but the submerged ones raise stranger questions. Could they be natural? Possibly, but geologists remain undecided. Oral traditions from local tribes speak of stone dwellers who lived beneath the lake, who vanished when the waters rose after a long drought. Some even claim the shapes beneath the surface match architectural layouts seen in distant Peruvian ruins. These megaliths have no explanation, only rumor and shadow. Fishermen sometimes say they hear echoes in the fog, bouncing unnaturally across the still water. Are these relics of a flooded culture, or is Pyramid Lake guarding something it's not ready to release? In the parched hills, north of Fallon, sits Lovelock Cave, a place shrouded in archaeological controversy and tribal legend. Excavated in the early 20th century, the cave yielded over 10,000 artifacts, baskets, duck decoys, and preserved human remains. But some discoveries were quietly removed, like giant sandals over 15 inches long and abnormally large skulls, now reportedly missing from official archives. The Paiute legend tells of the Saiti Ka, a red-haired, cannibalistic tribe driven into the cave and burned alive by united tribes. Scientists debate whether this was myth or memory, but the cave's stratified soil layers hint at habitation dating back 4,000 years or more. Charred remains of a fire barrier reinforce the tale's violent ending. Today, visitors can hike to the cave and peer inside its dark maw, but they won't see what's been taken. And perhaps that's the real mystery, not what remains in Lovelock Cave, but what was removed, and why. In the arid stretches west of the Black Rock Desert, home to Burning Man, ancient carvings on basalt walls whisper forgotten history. Here, the Black Rock petroglyph field isn't tourist-marked, but it exists, documented by researchers and tribal elders. What's baffling is that some petroglyphs vanish. Literally, photographed panels rechecked years later appear altered or eroded, even when surrounding rock shows no wear. Some say it's weather. Others speak of shadow people, spiritual forces said to protect sacred knowledge. The figures include elongated beings, celestial diagrams, and hunting scenes featuring tools unknown to local prehistoric tribes. Even stranger, GPS-logged locations sometimes fail to match reality when revisited. as if the site shifts, or time folds around it. Could ancient peoples have encoded some illusion into their art, or is something guarding these messages? Whatever the answer, one thing is certain: visitors who go looking often return changed, unsure what they saw, or whether it ever existed. Near Piochi, explorers have found boulders carved into shapes resembling human faces, silent and watching, half buried in sand. Some call them natural, others argue erosion doesn't explain the symmetry. Local ranchers tell stories of the watchers, rock giants who move when no one's looking. Photographs taken decades apart show changes in position or features, but no one's ever caught the change in action. Scientists rarely address these stones directly, dismissing them as pareidolia, our minds seeing faces in randomness. Yet tribes avoid the area after dusk. The faces seem oriented towards celestial points, particularly solstice sunrise and moonrise angles, suggesting an observational function, or perhaps a warning. GPS tagged and hikeable, these formations are increasingly visited, but the more eyes that observe them, the more strange reports surface sounds beneath the earth, faint humming, and shadowy outlines in the peripheral vision of campers. If these are mere stones, why do they feel alive? South of Alamo, in the Parinegate Valley, lies a bizarre petroglyph field, carved into pale volcanic tuff. The designs differ from those found anywhere else in Nevada: tight, labyrinthine coils, interlocking loops, and strange stair-step motifs that seem to lead nowhere. Scientists call them abstract or symbolic, but some researchers argue they mirror ancient memory palaces or mind maps, used to encode journeys through sacred space. Hikers have tried to follow the patterns, mapping them into real-world routes, only to find themselves inexplicably turned around, arriving back where they started without knowing how. Some believe the site is a form of psychological architecture, an early attempt at directing human consciousness through landscape. Locals say compasses misbehave here, and photos sometimes blur no matter the lens. The site is real, the experience harder to prove. One thing's for sure: no one walks the Parinegate glyphs and leaves without a sense of being observed by the stone itself. Hidden deep within the Basin and Range National Monument, the White River Narrows Petroglyph Complex stands as one of Nevada's largest concentrations of prehistoric rock art. Stretching across volcanic cliffs and canyon walls, the site features spirals, anthropomorphic figures, and deeply carved grid patterns. Yet what baffles experts isn't just their number, it's their mystery. Some motifs seem to depict celestial alignments, while others defy interpretation entirely. There are abstract forms that some researchers associate with sensory hallucinations or entoptic patterns seen in altered states of consciousness. But these glyphs are also aligned with ridgelines, water paths, and seasonal sun cycles. Could they have once mapped sacred knowledge or marked ritual thresholds? While archaeologists attribute the art to the Fremont and Southern Pied cultures, many carvings predate those groups entirely. In fact, the oldest panels may be over 4,000 years old, yet remain unweathered. Some hikers report a strange silence near the densest walls, as if sound is swallowed. Others say shadows from the carvings seem to stretch longer than they should. Though open to the public, the White River Narrows doesn't draw crowds. Maybe that's why its secrets have lasted so long, etched not just in stone but in the stillness of the canyon itself. On the southeastern slope of Mount Irish, two petroglyph panels have earned a reputation for staring back. Among dozens of figures etched into the rhyolite stone are two humanoid faces, one with wide circular eyes and a neutral expression, the other with downturned lines that resemble sadness or warning. Locals call them the Twin Watchers. The Mount Irish Archaeological District is federally protected and open to hikers, but few come across these specific glyphs unless guided. What's strange is the precise vantage point. Both faces align with a saddle in the mountain pass that during the spring equinox perfectly frames the rising sun. Were these faces meant to observe the turning of seasons, or were they marking something deeper, perhaps a portal or a sacred threshold? Some believe the two expressions represent duality, life and death, entry and exit. Ancient symbolism from Mesoamerican and Pueblo cultures shows similar pairings, despite no proven contact. The nearby carvings of horned serpents and headless figures only add to the unease. Many report dizziness or sudden emotion when approaching the site. Whether guardians, spirits, or simply symbols, the twin faces of Mount Irish leave an impression long after the hike ends. Just south of Las Vegas, the Sloan Canyon Petroglyph site holds more than 300 panels and over 1,700 individual designs, many of which remain unstudied due to the area's remote access and fragile desert terrain. Among the typical symbols, bighorn sheep, hunters and spirals, is one particular grid that has sparked speculation among independent researchers and archaeologists alike. Etched into a large volcanic slab is a nearly perfect checkerboard pattern, with 64 squares, far too symmetrical to be random. Some claim it's a game board, others suggest it was a form of land plotting or ceremonial calendar. But what confounds even more is that this same motif appears in rock art sites across the globe, from Africa to the American Southwest, despite vast cultural separations. Could this grid represent a universal language of early cognition? Or did ancient travelers share information across vast forgotten routes? The Bureau of Land Management avoids endorsing fringe theories, yet admits the Sloan pattern is anomalous. Hikers who visit often overlook it, unless they feel drawn to that one strange panel that doesn't quite fit with anything else in the canyon. It's as though someone once tried to map an idea we still haven't learned how to read. Tucked away in Nevada's southeast desert near the Arizona border, Gold Butte National Monument hides one of the state's most enigmatic collections of rock art, the Shaman panels. Accessible by rugged trails and high-clearance vehicles, these panels depict horned figures, outstretched arms, and serpentine lines radiating from skull-like heads. Some scholars interpret them as ritualistic portrayals of trance states, created during vision quests or spiritual ceremonies. But the carvings go deeper, layered in such density that they appear superimposed, as if generations kept returning to the same rock face. Radiocarbon dating from surrounding hearths places their creation somewhere between 1000 BCE and 1200 CE. However, some of the oldest figures appear deeply faded, weathered beyond that timeline. What did these shamans see in the desert heat? Were they mapping an unseen world? Some local guides whisper that certain panels move slightly between visits, or that photos taken of them never quite match what the eye saw. The site's remoteness adds to its enigma. It's not a place you accidentally stumble into. You have to want to find it. And when you do, the figures wait, not carved into the stone, but rising from it, like spirits caught mid-transformation. Just north of Alamo, Nevada lies a stretch of volcanic terrain, dotted with boulders, bearing marks that have resisted classification. These are not petroglyphs in the traditional sense. No animals, no humans, no spirals. Instead, the boulders around Ash Springs show precise geometric cuts, angled lines, nested triangles, and a peculiar symbol that resembles a stylized insect or mechanical shape. Geologists have ruled out natural fracturing. These lines are deliberate, as if something etched them with tools beyond stone or bone. No tribes in the area claim the markings, and there's no cultural continuity to explain them. Some researchers have suggested proto-writing or experimental carving, but no similar examples exist in the region. Even stranger, these markings often occur near natural water sources, springs or seeps, hinting at a lost connection between symbol and sustenance. A few believe these boulders could be remnants of an ancient language or technology, perhaps marking energy lines or sacred routes. Whatever their purpose, they remain largely ignored by mainstream studies, but hikers and photographers know where to find them, half buried in desert silence, waiting for someone who can read the code. In the sculpted slot canyons of Cathedral Gorge State Park, Nature reigns supreme, wind-carved spires, clay ridges, and narrow passageways that echo with sound. But among these formations, a few stand out. Columns polished unnaturally smooth, with ridges worn in a uniform fashion, inconsistent with typical erosion. Some say they feel worked, too even, too aligned to be accidental. While the park is a geological wonder, some visitors claim these pillars resemble entryways or columns from lost architecture. An old prospector's journal from the 1890s even describes stone halls and blind stairs leading nowhere. No evidence of ancient construction has ever been found here, yet the rumors persist. Could these forms be remnants of a soft stone building technique, or merely examples of pareidolia amplified by wind and time? A few independent researchers have floated theories involving ancient monastic retreats or ritual centers, while skeptics insist it's all coincidence. But hikers often report something odd in these corridors, a sudden shift in temperature, or a hollow ringing underfoot. Whether natural or shaped by long-lost hands, the pillars of Cathedral Gorge remain Nevada's quietest architectural riddle. Nestled in the still water mountains near Fallon, Spirit Cave was long known only to local tribes, until a startling archaeological discovery in 1940 changed everything. Inside lay the mummified remains of a man wrapped in finely woven matting, so well preserved that scientists initially dismissed the possibility of great age. But in the 1990s, radiocarbon dating revealed a shock. The Spirit Cave man was over 10,000 years old, predating known habitation in the region by thousands of years. Stranger still is the cave's configuration: two main chambers, each with signs of ceremonial use, but oriented toward different celestial alignments. One points to the winter solstice sunrise, the other toward a constellation grouping no longer visible from that latitude. Was this cave used for burial, worship, or something else entirely? The mummy was removed for study and only returned to tribal hands in 2016, after a lengthy legal battle, but the cave remains. Today, it's closed to the public, protected due to its sacred status, but its twin-chamber structure and the untouched dust of its floor still whisper of rituals older than agriculture, older than memory, and older, perhaps, than the desert itself. High in the Tacoma Range sits a limestone shelter, rarely visited by casual hikers. Tacoma Cave. Inside, the walls are alive with red ochre pictographs, layered concentric circles, dots, stick figures, with antlers, and other symbols that appear animated in flickering torchlight. But it's not just the visuals that disturb researchers, it's the acoustics. Sound in Tacoma Cave does not behave as expected. Echoes ripple oddly, returning with delay or distortion. A clap may bounce 5 or 6 times, while a whisper at the center projects across the room with uncanny clarity. Some acousticians believe the cave was chosen precisely for this property, a natural amplifier for ritual chanting or altered state ceremony. The Western Shoshone people consider the cave deeply sacred, but few traditional stories have been publicly shared. What's known is this: the pictographs are layered across generations, implying centuries of return to this very spot. Some hikers claim dreams afterward, visions of hollow-eyed beings or animals with too many limbs. Scientists avoid these claims, but the cave remains under active study. Even as Nevada's sun blisters the rocks outside, Tacoma Cave keeps its strange chill, as though it still expects a visitor who remembers the right words to speak. Hidden Cave, located just east of Fallon and accessible via guided tours, has long perplexed archaeologists. Originally discovered in 1927, the cave was excavated multiple times throughout the 20th century, yielding an enormous cache of storage baskets, woven tools, and preserved organic material. Yet no evidence of long-term human occupation was ever found. No hearths, no sleeping areas, no waste piles. So why was it filled with so much material? The dominant theory is that Hidden Cave was a prehistoric storage site, used over centuries by desert peoples as a kind of communal vault. But some researchers have questioned this interpretation, pointing out that portions of the cave remain sealed by rockfalls that appear placed, not natural. What lies beyond those sealed chambers remains unknown. Georadar scans show voids behind some collapsed areas, passageways or rooms still inaccessible. Tribal oral histories speak of sacred interiors, not meant for living. Places where only the initiated could tread. Could Hidden Cave be part of a larger underground complex? For now, tourists walk along a wooden boardwalk into its shadowy entrance, guided by flashlights and facts. But somewhere behind the dust and time is a door no one's yet opened, and whatever was meant to remain hidden may still be waiting. High in Nevada's eastern Snake Range, hikers have occasionally stumbled upon small, rounded openings in the rock, no more than a meter wide, leading into cozy womb-like chambers. These formations, known locally as cradle caves, are often overlooked in geological surveys, but have been found near ancient rock shelters and ceremonial areas. Within some of these caves, faint red pigment marks the walls, forming arcs and crosshatches, unlike typical Fremont or Paiute art. What's stranger is their shape, curved inward, smooth, and echo-free, as if sculpted for silence. Ethnographers have speculated that these spaces were used for coming-of-age rituals, childbirth ceremonies, or isolation periods during spiritual preparation. Others wonder if they served as dream chambers, designed to disorient and induce visions through darkness and stillness. Visitors who spend time inside report odd sensations, pressure in the chest, spatial confusion, or auditory hallucinations. No formal study has confirmed these effects. The National Park Service notes their existence, but offers no public trail to them. Perhaps that's for the best. Some things, carved softly into mountain bone, were never meant for daylight. In the cliffs above Laughlin, Grapevine Canyon is known for its beautiful petroglyphs, but few know of the small cave system hidden further up the ridge. Inside these natural chambers, archaeologists found fragmented bones arranged in odd linear patterns, far from burial mounds or habitation debris. These aren't mass graves or sacrificial piles. They are scattered deliberately, vertebrae lined like paths, femurs circling naturally formed pits, tiny bones pressed into cracks, like offerings. The cave's interior is shaped to amplify sound, and clapping or humming produces overlapping echoes that seem to vibrate the very bones. Analysis shows the bones are from deer, birds, and small mammals, but some fragments remain unidentified. Was this cave a ritual sound chamber, a death passage, or something more symbolic, a place where the living spoke to the unseen using bones as keys? Local tribes avoid the cave, calling it a place of noise without source. It is not listed on official trail maps, and has been left unmarked, despite its proximity to the popular petroglyph site. Perhaps it's better that way. Some echoes belong only to the past, and some bones are better left where they sing. Long dried and cracked, the Winnemucca lakebed sprawls like a forgotten ocean north of Pyramid Lake. Here, isolated ridges rise from the salt-scoured surface, and at their bases, mounded structures dot the landscape. Locals long believed them to be burial mounds, but no human remains have ever been recovered. Instead, inside the mounds are fire-blackened stones, strange bundles of ash, and occasionally, intricately woven reed items too fragile to remove. Carbon dating places the site at 3,000 years old, yet the rituals remain unknown. The shapes of the mounds resemble burial tumuli from across the globe, but with no corpses, scholars hesitate to name them. Could they have been symbolic burials, offerings for ancestors lost elsewhere, or did they serve as energy foci, perhaps aligning with solstice events? Drones mapping the site have revealed geometric patterns invisible from the ground, as if each mound is part of a larger design etched across the lakebed floor. With no signs, no guides, and no nearby facilities, the site remains unprotected. But for those who make the trek, the mounds offer a solemn hush and an ancient puzzle. What kind of people bury nothing, yet leave behind so much? In the heart of Railroad Valley, far from marked trails and nearly inaccessible without high-clearance vehicles, lie a series of stone rings spread across a remote basin floor, roughly 20 to 30 feet in diameter. These rings are formed from aligned rocks, each stone sunken partially into the hardpan, as if intentionally placed. There are no walls, no hearths, and no artifacts found within them. Archaeologists hesitate to call them dwellings, as they lack the indicators of habitation, yet they are too organized to be natural. Satellite imaging shows that many of the rings appear oriented toward cardinal directions or celestial points, some aligning with mountain notches where the sun rises during equinoxes. Others cluster like constellations when viewed from above, hinting at a possible star map function. Tribal oral traditions mention sky markers and desert gatherings where stories were drawn in stone, not told. Could these rings have been observatories, ceremonial dance enclosures, or are they relics of a forgotten language etched into earth, meant to be read only from above? Railroad Valley's isolation has preserved these rings, but also buried their meaning beneath silence, heat, and the slow drift of Nevada's sand-choked winds. In the muddy mountains northeast of Las Vegas, hikers sometimes stumble upon sandstone boulders that appear to be bleeding. Thin rivulets of crimson stain their sides, winding down the stone as though the rock itself were weeping iron. While some attribute the coloring to natural oxidation or lichen, others note that these stains only appear after certain desert rains, and they emerge in patterns. Some stains resemble figures, while others pool at the feet of vaguely altar-like formations. In one case, a streak formed the outline of a human face, then disappeared within days. Photographs taken over the past 3 decades show recurring formations, even after weather and erosion should have washed them clean. Geologists admit the phenomenon is rare, even anomalous, especially given the limited moisture in the region. Local lore speaks of bloodstones used in rituals to speak with ancestors, or to mark transgressions. Whatever their origin, the boulders attract both curiosity and unease. Visitors often report uneasy feelings when approaching them, an instinct to leave, even as the landscape remains calm. Whether mineral coincidence or spiritual residue, the muddy mountains bleed in ways science still can't fully explain. Black Rock Desert is known for its alkaline flats and geothermal wonders, but less known are the vanishing springs that appear only in certain years, then vanish completely for decades. Locals and researchers have documented springs emerging in precise locations during rare rainfall events, some warm, others cold. What makes them bizarre is their consistent reappearance in geometric configurations. A triangle one year, a linear sequence another. The springs form quickly, within hours of the rain, and recede just as fast, leaving behind no moisture or runoff. In 1991, a group of amateur researchers attempted to chart them, noting that some of the spring alignments pointed directly to surrounding buttes and rock outcrops containing petroglyphs. Were these springs once used as markers, ritual indicators? Some believe the formations are connected to geothermal fault lines, but USGS surveys can't confirm the exact mechanism. A few springs even emerge from spots previously drilled and deemed dry. Satellite thermal imaging has shown subtle heat fluctuations in those areas for years afterward. These springs, which bubble up from silence, remain unclaimed by geology or history, but their water, however brief, leaves behind more questions than answers. Scattered across arid foothills in Lincoln County are natural stone formations that seem to defy physics. Massive boulders perched atop spires of eroded clay and sediment, balanced with uncanny precision. While hoodoos and rock pedestals are known phenomena, some of these stones appear so delicately placed, so geometrically aligned, that they spark debate. Drone footage reveals several formations arranged in patterns visible only from above: straight lines, spirals, even a triangle stretching nearly a mile across. Geologists attribute this to wind erosion and ancient lakebed shifts, yet none can explain why certain balancing stones seem untouched by storms that eroded their neighbors. Some claim these were used as navigation points, giant cairns placed to guide early desert travelers or signal seasonal movement. Others argue that the formations were spiritually significant, with tribes visiting specific stones during rituals. The most famous, Needle Rock, casts a shadow that aligns perfectly with a smaller upright stone during equinox sunset. It's easy to dismiss these patterns as coincidence, until you stand beneath a multi-ton boulder that hasn't budged in thousands of years and realize it's watching the sun with intent. The Carson Sink, a remnant of prehistoric Lake Lahontan, is a vast, desolate expanse, but amidst the salt pans and dry lakebed are strange circular crust fields. These patches, sometimes as large as a football field, consist of tightly compacted mineral crust arranged in concentric rings. Satellite imagery reveals their perfect symmetry, but on the ground they appear subtle, even invisible to the casual observer. No human structures or burials have ever been found within them. Scientists say they're a result of capillary action and salt migration. Yet similar formations appear only in areas where ancient artifacts, such as obsidian blades and shell beads, have been found nearby. Could these fields have marked ceremonial sites, long since erased by water and time? Local stories say birds refuse to land on the crust circles, and compasses sometimes spin when placed in their centers. Their location, shape, and durability remain a riddle. In a desert where few features last long, these mineral circles persist unclaimed, unnamed, and unexplained. Outside the ruins of Delamar, a Nevada ghost town once called the Widowmaker, for its deadly mining dust, runs a jagged ridge split clean down the middle. This isn't a fissure caused by typical fault line activity. The split runs in an unnaturally straight line, almost perfectly linear, for nearly half a mile, creating a chasm wide enough to walk inside. Locals call it the Scar, and despite its remoteness, the ridge has become a source of fascination for those who stumble upon it. Some say it's the result of blasting during Delamar's mining heyday, but no records or debris support this. Others note how aligned it is with solstice sunrise angles, too perfect to be coincidence. Inside the chasm, desert flora refuses to grow. Rock walls show striations unlike surrounding geology, and at night, temperature drops more than 15 degrees compared to the surface. Explorers have claimed to hear faint metallic sounds echoing from deep within, too rhythmic to be mere wind. Geologists avoid making bold claims, but a 22 LiDAR scan revealed subterranean cavities beneath the ridge, possibly connecting to old mine tunnels, or something older. The Scar has no markers, no warning signs, just silence, and a lingering sense that it wasn't made by nature alone. Valley of Fire State Park is known for its vivid red sandstone and iconic rock formations, but hidden among the more visited arches and ridges are standing stones whose purpose is far more mysterious. Atop a lesser-known ridge sits a trio of upright stones, each shaped like an angled fin, seemingly placed with intent. On the morning of the summer solstice, sunlight threads precisely between the gaps of two of the stones, casting a blade of light onto the third. This effect lasts only minutes. Archaeologists have called it a coincidence, but the angles are too precise. No petroglyphs exist nearby, and no artifacts have been found around the site. Yet local Paiute traditions speak of sun gates, through which the light of ancestors passed to reach the living. Could this formation be one of those ancient gates? Its placement atop a wind-scoured ridge, far from trails or dwellings, suggests ritual use, not daily life. And while visitors flock to the more iconic Firewave or Elephant Rock, few ever hike high enough to witness the solstice alignment. For those who do, it feels less like sunlight hitting stone, and more like the past speaking briefly through light, then sealing itself shut for another year. Rising above the western rim of Lake Mead, Fortification Hill appears as a massive basalt mesa, flat-topped and formidable. But atop its plateau, arranged along the lava ridges, lie a series of depressions and rock clusters that some researchers believe form a sky map. When first documented by early 20th century surveyors, these clusters were dismissed as natural. But modern drone imagery reveals that the stones correspond to major constellations as they appeared in the skies 2,000 years ago. Orion Pleiades, and possibly Ursa Major. While no inscriptions or petroglyphs mark the site, the deliberate placement of specific dark stones in otherwise featureless terrain is suspicious. Even more intriguing, the positioning suggests a tracking function, with certain points aligning with the heliacal rising of stars known to mark planting and migration seasons among ancient cultures. Indigenous oral tradition describes Fortification Hill as a place of watching, and though the site is not well known, some stargazers make pilgrimages there during equinoxes. Whether ancient observatory or accidental alignment, the stones remain undisturbed, resting atop a mesa that has watched the stars longer than history has dared to record. In a remote canyon near Panaka, a series of stone-lined pits, locally known as the Lunar Wells, descend into the ground like inverted towers, averaging 3 to 6 feet wide and up to 10 feet deep. These wells are too narrow for habitation and too remote to serve as water collectors. Their stone walls are smooth and reflect light in unusual ways. But what truly puzzles investigators is that moonlight, during specific phases, reaches the bottom of some of these wells and illuminates embedded quartz lines etched into the sides. No known culture in the area used moonlight for agriculture or ritual tracking, at least not formally documented. Yet these wells, positioned in clusters, seem to track lunar cycles with astonishing accuracy. During the supermoon of 2021, amateur astronomers confirmed that one well reflected light onto a neighboring ridge, forming a visible beam for exactly 6 minutes. Are these ancient lunar observatories, ritual birthplaces, or something altogether more abstract, channels for energy, time, or spirit? Whatever their purpose, the lunar wells offer no inscriptions, no tools, no bones, just stone, moonlight, and mystery. In the high desert between Lake Mead and Searchlight lies Grapevine Mesa, a wind-blown plateau known for its Joshua trees and volcanic terrain. But near its center is a peculiar arrangement of flat stones laid out in a massive radial pattern, like the face of a clock. 12 main paths stretch from a central boulder, each pointing to a specific horizon marker. At first glance, it resembles a sundial. More detailed study shows that these paths align with sunrise and sunset, on equinoxes and solstices, as well as with cross-quarter days, used by ancient agricultural calendars. No formal excavations have occurred, and BLM officials have left the site unmarked to avoid damage. Yet tribal elders acknowledge it, calling it the wheel and associating it with seasonal ceremonies. It may be the only intact solar tracking site of its kind in southern Nevada. What's striking is the scale. It spans nearly 80 feet across, a massive undertaking for any ancient culture in a resource-scarce environment. Some stones bear notches or subtle engravings, but no writing. Like a machine without moving parts, the desert clock waits each year to tick once more, marking time for people who may never return to read it. In the Shooting Gallery archaeological area of Lincoln County, amidst dozens of bighorn sheep carvings and geometric glyphs, one strange panel stands apart. It depicts 7 dots in a bent line, surrounded by arcs and cross-hatchings that mimic known star maps of Orion's belt. While interpretations of celestial petroglyphs remain controversial, this panel mirrors configurations found in Egypt and Mesoamerica, even matching a proposed Orion alignment seen in South American geoglyphs. The panel is high on a ridge, accessible only by scrambling a narrow rock chute, suggesting that it was not meant for casual viewers. The dots are unusually deep, almost drilled and surrounded by pigments that fluoresce under UV light, a rare find in open-air rock art. Some researchers suggest this was part of a night-watching ritual, where shamans or skywatchers waited for Orion's rise to begin seasonal transitions or hunting cycles. Others argue it's mere coincidence, but among the dozens of glyphs in the area, only this one appears to speak to the stars directly. Visitors who stand before it at night often feel the uncanny pull of a forgotten calendar, etched not just into the stone, but into the sky above. Hidden away from the main tourist paths of Red Rock Canyon is a small alcove known by a few as the Lightbox. This natural chamber, no larger than a child's bedroom, contains a flat rock wall cut by a narrow horizontal slit. During sunrise on the spring and fall equinoxes, sunlight passes through the slit and projects a rectangular beam onto the opposite wall. There, a petroglyph of a handprint and spiral begin to glow, illuminated for precisely 7 minutes. This was first noticed in the 1970s, but has never been officially studied or marked. Independent researchers believe it functioned as a solar shrine or calendar, marking key dates for planting, ritual, or migration. What's remarkable is the precision. A half-inch shift in stone position would destroy the effect. Local tribes have remained silent about the site, neither confirming nor denying its purpose. Some visitors say the cave hums softly during the light event, though no device has ever recorded the sound. Whether spiritual, astronomical, or both, the Lightbox Shrine serves as a silent observatory, a place where stone, sun, and shadow create a fleeting spectacle older than any written timepiece. At the edge of Lake Mead's receding shoreline lies the ghost town of St. Thomas, once swallowed by water after the Hoover Dam's completion. While most know it as a 19th century Mormon settlement, what's less discussed is what divers and droughts have gradually revealed beneath its silted layers. Pre-contact artifacts, obsidian flakes, and what appears to be a much older stone foundation beneath the town's recognizable grid. Recent LiDAR scans suggest substructural remnants predating modern settlement by centuries, if not more. These foundations follow a pattern unlike traditional European or pioneer layouts, circular, aligned with cardinal points, and lacking any fireplace or chimney remains. Were these ancient dwellings or ritual enclosures? Indigenous oral tradition refers to a city that sank in silence long before dams or water lines ever reached the region. As the lake continues to shrink, more of these unexplained features rise from the mud. But the question lingers, did the settlers of St. Thomas build unknowingly atop something ancient? And if so, did they disturb a pattern laid long before their time? The water covered it once. Now the desert wind begins to uncover what may have been lost, not for a century, but for 1,000 years. Walker Lake, shimmering in the desert basin of Mineral County, holds more than just endangered fish species along its historic shorelines, now receded due to environmental change. Archaeologists have uncovered curious stone alignments resembling aquatic shapes. Fish, turtles, even coiled eels. These effigies, made from basalt and rhyolite stones, range from 3 to 15 feet in length and are best viewed from elevated ridges. Their purpose remains unknown. Some suggest they marked seasonal fish spawning zones, while others propose ceremonial functions tied to water spirits. Tribal accounts mention fish songs sung at specific stones to ensure the return of silver trout, a species now nearly gone. What's especially perplexing is that some formations appear layered, older patterns beneath newer ones, each slightly shifted according to shifting water lines over centuries. Could these be maps, adapted over generations to reflect a living lake? Or are they monuments, memories in stone, to a time when water was sacred and abundant? As the lake continues to shrink, more of these effigies emerge from the dust. What was once buried beneath a life-giving reservoir now lies exposed under the sun, awaiting those who can read its aquatic script. West of Fallon lies the dry white plain of Soda Lake, a shimmering salt pan ringed by ancient terraces. Most pass it without a second glance, but aerial imagery reveals a narrow rock line, a nearly straight causeway stretching over 700 feet from one ridge to the lake bed. Unlike wagon ruts or mining scars, this formation is built from intentionally placed basalt, laid edge to edge with surprising precision. There are no signs of cart tracks, foot trails, or surrounding camps. Some researchers believe it may have been used by prehistoric peoples to cross wet zones during ritual migration. Others suggest it had a spiritual function, perhaps a path reserved for salt priests or initiates conducting water ceremonies. Local Paiute legend refers to the White Lake with the road for the Skymen, but offers little else. What baffles geologists is how the stones remain unmoved by shifting floodwaters that have swept the basin for centuries. Like a road leading nowhere, the causeway begins in desert dust and ends in flat white silence. Yet every line laid in ancient stone is a sentence in an unwritten prayer, and this one stretches into a place no one remembers. When water levels dip at Lahontan Reservoir, shallow inlets reveal strange patterns, circular depressions, paved patches of stone, and triangular berms hidden just beneath the waterline. Boaters often spot these formations in coves that were never marked for construction or farming. In 2019, a kayaking expedition photographed a sequence of submerged stone rings, each exactly 18 feet apart and aligned northeast-southwest. No official explanation has been issued, though some attribute them to historic cattle enclosures or irrigation systems. However, ground surveys have revealed no tools, posts, or barbed wire, only tightly packed, hand-selected stones. Local stories suggest these may be water circles, ritual gathering spots for pre-contact water tribes that met during solstice floods. Whether ceremony or engineering, the rings remain intact after decades underwater. Divers report cold pockets inside them and strange echoes when shouting above their submerged outlines. As Nevada's reservoirs fluctuate, more such shapes surface briefly before vanishing again beneath the silt. Like breathing relics, they appear only when the balance is right, half in this world, half in the one that drowned long before engineers gave the desert a dam. Tucked in the Amargosa Valley, near the California border, lies Ash Meadows National Wildlife Refuge, a rare desert oasis home to endemic fish and crystal-clear springs. Yet off the main boardwalks, hidden by saltgrass and mesquite, lie strange dry wells, hand-dug shafts, just wide enough for one person, descending 15 to 20 feet. Carbon dating from wood fragments suggests some are at least 2,000 years old, but they weren't dug for water, at least not entirely. Some end in sealed clay walls, while others open into small chambers just big enough to lie in. A few contain faint ochre markings or bone fragments from animals never found nearby. Anthropologists have debated their use: trial graves, isolation cells, vision chambers, or sacrificial pits. Whatever the purpose, their locations correspond with ancient footpaths now buried by time. Some researchers believe the wells formed a spiritual circuit, each one a step on a journey, symbolic or literal, toward rebirth or enlightenment. Today, most go unnoticed. Ash Meadows shines with bright springs and endangered life, but these old dry wells speak of a different kind of survival, one that dug downward into mystery, not outward into daylight. East of the Sand Mountain Recreation Area, where towering dunes stretch across ancient seabeds, off-roaders have long reported strange rock arrangements poking through the sand. Walls, room-like corners, even steps. Most chalk it up to ghost towns or old ranching cabins, but a 2018 expedition uncovered stone mortar holes and shell beads. Unlike anything from the settler period, these signs point to a far older origin, possibly an indigenous desert settlement, swallowed by the advancing dunes. What complicates the mystery is the intermittent visibility. The site is only accessible every few years, when wind erosion uncovers the structures briefly before burying them again. Aerial scans show outlines of larger complexes under the sand, but no excavation has occurred due to shifting terrain. Local oral histories speak of a village of breath, named for the way it disappears and reappears like exhalation. Could this have been a seasonal habitation built to move with the earth itself, or did its builders know the sand would one day preserve their secrets? What little remains, worn bowls, obsidian flakes, and half-visible corridors, offers no clear answers. Only the desert breathes them back, one gust at a time. In the limestone folds of Mount Potosi, southwest of Las Vegas, a narrow cave mouth opens into a chamber streaked with mineral colors. But deep within this system lies a hidden alcove that once held dozens of ochre and charcoal pictographs, abstract forms, animal outlines, and a recurring triangle within triangle motif, whose meaning remains lost. First documented in the 1920s by spelunkers, these paintings were later ignored by major surveys due to their inaccessibility. In recent years, however, rediscovery by climbers and cave enthusiasts has reignited debate. Why are these images found in complete darkness, far from any natural light? Some anthropologists suggest they were painted during trance rituals, navigation through a symbolic underworld. Others believe they represent early cosmologies, the triangle as mountain, as womb, as portal. The cave itself emits peculiar acoustics, echoing faintly, even without sound. Those who've slept inside report vivid dreams, often of lightless animals or faceless guides. Though partially damaged by time and graffiti, the remaining pigments still pulse with meaning, offering a glimpse of a belief system older than memory and encoded not in text, but in vision. In a seldom hiked region, east of Ely, lies Red Mountain Basin, where scattered rock faces seem to hold more than wind and erosion. Here, along steep cliffs of tuff and rhyolite, dozens of naturally occurring stone profiles resemble humanoid faces, some subtle, others jarringly lifelike. Local legend speaks of them as watchers, protectors, left by sky spirits to observe the land in silence. What intrigues scientists isn't their appearance alone, but their clustering. Many are grouped around ancient trailheads, springs or cave systems. A 2004 study attempted to catalogue them, noting over 30 unique profiles, many facing either sunrise or solstice horizon lines. Geologists admit that some formations may be coincidental, shaped by freeze-thaw fracturing, but others show suspicious symmetry, identical eye sockets, nasal ridges, and mouths too even to dismiss. One particularly vivid guardian oversees a now dry spring. Visitors often feel uneasy under its gaze, some reporting dizziness or pressure in the ears. Whether these are natural coincidences or intentional modifications, enhanced by forgotten hands, the faces of Red Mountain remain etched into stone like sentinels, silent but never sleeping. Near the Oregon border lies Massacre Rim, a dark sky sanctuary famous for its untouched skies, but few know that its black basalt cliffs also hold some of Nevada's most unsettling petroglyphs. Unlike the flowing figures or hunting scenes found elsewhere, these carvings depict horned humanoids with elongated limbs, exaggerated fingers, and what appear to be concentric halos or energy fields radiating from their heads. Known to a few researchers as the Radiant Ones, these beings are flanked by spirals, zigzags, and what looks like falling or floating objects. No known tribe claims these glyphs, and the area has long been avoided in local traditions. One oral tale warns of sky people who drew themselves before they walked. Skeptics argue they're depictions of ritual masks or dancers, but their style is distinct, unconnected to Fremont or Great Basin rock art. Visitors who photograph the glyphs often capture strange lens flares or color distortions, not easily replicated. One climber described a ringing sound that started when he stood too long near the largest figure. Massacre Rim's glyphs seem to tell a story no one remembers, etched for the stars or for something that once came from them. Just north of Las Vegas, Tule Springs Fossil Beds National Monument preserves Ice Age fauna remains, mammoths, camels, and extinct horses. But interspersed among the official fossil sites, hikers have found curious arrangements of small stones and fossil fragments, set in circular patterns, sometimes mimicking the shapes of long-dead animals. While most attribute these to amateur rock artists or misinterpretations, some of the configurations are buried beneath layers dated over 1,000 years old. One such effigy, a mammoth-like shape outlined in white quartz, was found beneath a sediment layer containing datable charcoal, No known culture in the region used fossils for artistic or ritual purposes, and yet these shapes persist. Could ancient peoples have discovered Ice Age bones and honored them through landscape art? Or were they warning markers, memorials for creatures whose extinction still echoed in oral traditions? While formal excavation of these effigies remains limited due to preservation concerns, more are found each season. Thule Springs may preserve ancient life, but it may also preserve ancient memory, told not through myth, but through stone circles honoring giants whose shadows once walked the moorhead. At Blue Point Spring near Lake Mead, beneath steep ridges and within sunburnt washes, are faint, barely visible glyphs, etched into the stone, horizontal lines broken by smaller vertical strokes. These are not pictures or animals, but what some believe may be tally marks, lunar cycle records, or even proto-writing. Discovered in the 1960s, but never publicly announced, the site was briefly surveyed before being left unmarked to prevent vandalism. Independent researchers argue the strokes follow predictable cycles, 28-day counts, possibly female-centered ceremonial records, or planting calendars. Others see them as communicative, perhaps names, prayers, or boundary markers. What fuels the mystery is that these ridgelines lie near hot springs once considered sacred, and where no known habitation sites have been located. Visitors have described a pull to certain stones, where the glyphs glow slightly in low sun. Could this be the earliest written language in Nevada, or simply the residue of forgotten ritual? Either way, these line glyphs break from tradition and hint at something more structured, an intelligence not just artistic, but mathematical, recording time in the bones of the desert. In the otherworldly formations of Cathedral Gorge, along narrow canyons and eroded clay towers, is a steep cliff wall bearing what looks unmistakably like a face, rounded cheeks, a recessed mouth, and deep-set eyes. Unlike other face rocks, this one appears cradled by the formation itself, emerging only at specific angles and during golden hour light. Local hikers call it the Sleeping Mother, referencing its protective shape and haunting stillness. The face rests above a small alcove, which contains smooth, bowl-like depressions in the ground, as though used for offerings or grinding. Yet no artifacts have been found. Geological surveys haven't noted the face officially, but tribal stories collected in the 19th century speak of Mother Earth turning her face to stone to watch her children sleep. Whether a coincidence of erosion or a carved relic of devotion, the cradle-faced cliff has a magnetic quality. One visitor reported her infant stopped crying immediately upon entering the alcove, then began humming, a sound the mother had never heard before. Cathedral Gorge is a land of geological wonder, but some formations whisper of spirit, not sediment. And this one seems to dream, silently, beneath a sky too wide for answers. On the salt-streaked edges of Stillwater Marsh near Fallon lies a peculiar ring of earth, 20 feet in diameter, slightly raised, and perfectly symmetrical. It's not a pond nor a farming circle, and satellite imagery confirms its formation predates irrigation infrastructure. When excavated in the 1970s, researchers discovered cremated bone fragments, ash layers, and an absence of personal artifacts. No tools, no adornments, nothing to suggest standard burial practice. Yet the bones showed precision cuts and signs of repeated exposure to low, consistent heat, suggesting ritual cremation rather than accidental fire. Tribal elders refused to speak of it, offering only the term place of last breath. What troubles researchers is the recurrence. 3 more rings of similar size and structure have been found within a mile, each aligned to compass points and equinox sunrises. Could this have been a death site for an elite caste, a circle of transition between realms, or something darker, sacrifice, perhaps, or offering? The earth remains tight-packed, as if compacted by ritual footfalls. When the wind moves through the marsh grass, the ring forms a perfect still zone, dead air, no rustle. It is a place where life ended with intent, and something of that still lingers. East of Overton, the flat expanse of Mormon Mesa holds a scattering of stone piles, cairns that, when first recorded in the 1950s, stood in symmetric lines. Today, most are toppled, scattered, or buried under shifting sand. But older aerial photographs show rows of 9, each spaced 66 feet apart and facing westward. No one knows who built them. Local ranchers claimed they appeared overnight. Early settlers noted them in journals, calling them spirit markers. What's eerie is that under each cairn, when excavated, lay no bones, but instead burned soil and feathers, sometimes bundled in tightly bound reed wraps. Some researchers suggest these were shrines for sky burials, or perhaps way stations in death journeys. Others argue the cairns acted as spiritual beacons, constructed to guide souls westward, following the sun into the realm of the dead. In one cairn, a hollow bone flute was discovered, broken cleanly in two, as if symbolizing the severing of life's breath. The site is rarely visited now, with many cairns lost to erosion, but a few still stand, barely, under the endless sky, monuments to rites we can no longer witness, but whose echo remains in the cracked stones and the spaces between them. High above the desert basin, on the rim of Dead Horse Ridge near Ely, lies a blackened ring scorched into the stone itself, encircled by upright stones like teeth. The ring measures 12 feet across and contains a central pillar, melted at the top, as though subjected to intense heat. There is no volcanic activity here, no lightning scars, nothing natural explains it, but charred bones of antelope and jackrabbit have been found at the base of the pillar, along with a perfectly circular ash pit containing unburned fragments of sage and an unidentified red powder. The local Shoshone do not speak of this place. One elder, when asked, merely said, "It's still hot." Scientific attempts to test the stone for radioactivity or chemical residue yielded nothing conclusive, but hikers who've approached the ring have reported nausea, dizziness, and in one case, a sudden nosebleed. Geologists say the melted pillar should not exist in that environment, that temperatures required to alter stone in such a way would need to be volcanic or industrial. But there are no mines, no blasts, no explanations. Only the silence of burned air and a place no animal dares cross. The fire is gone, but something remains lit beneath the surface. In the flatlands southwest of Pahrump, where Joshua trees twist into strange silhouettes, sits a solitary mound, too symmetrical to be natural, yet never catalogued as a burial site or hill fort. Standing roughly 8 feet high and 30 feet across, the mound is built from compacted earth, crushed shells, and layers of tiny charcoal flakes. What sets it apart is the sound. When one stands atop the mound and speaks, the voice returns in whispers, distorted and low, as though the earth replies. It's not an echo. Recordings taken at the site capture strange tonal shifts, low murmurs not heard in real time. Beneath the mound, probes detected hollow voids, narrow chambers or tunnels, but no excavation has ever been permitted. Some suggest it's a spirit lodge, or a listening point, built to communicate with the ancestors, or the dead. Others believe it was used for initiation rites, where the initiate was buried overnight, left to hear the voices. Whatever its purpose, animals refused to cross it, and desert winds seem to swirl oddly around its sides. The mound listens, and sometimes, if you stand very still, it speaks back. In Ruby Valley, among the sagebrush and glacial runoff, are long, narrow furrows in the soil, nearly invisible, until the light hits them just right. These aren't farming rows, they're packed with blackened ash, broken obsidian, and bone fragments bleached white. Each row measures exactly 4 feet wide, and stretches for over 60 feet, running parallel to one another like stripes across the earth. Excavations revealed no artifacts, no hearths, no structures, just more ash, more silence. Some suggest these were mass cremation rows, perhaps used during a forgotten plague or famine. Others think they served as ritual purification paths, where fire cleansed the body, or the spirit, before entering sacred ground. But there's no destination, no temple, no cairn, no mound. The rows simply stop. Researchers have noticed odd plant growth nearby, sage that twists in knots, grass that grows in perfect circles, and always the birds fall silent when one approaches. Ruby Valley is a place of quiet beauty, but beneath its surface lies something far older, and perhaps far more deliberate, than any settler, surveyor, or mapmaker could ever comprehend. In the shifting golden dunes near Beatty, where the sand sings in the wind, lies a scatter of dark stones that pulse with something unspoken. These basalt stones, found half buried in dune hollows, are curiously smooth, polished as if by hands not wind. When arranged in a circle, compasses within the boundary begin to spin, metal detectors go haywire, photographic equipment malfunctions. What makes these stones stranger, still, is their apparent magnetism, weak but measurable, fluctuating with moon phases and atmospheric pressure. Locals call them power stones. One elder said they were smashed from the sky. There are no impact craters nearby, no mining scars, yet the stones seem to resist classification. Geologists argue they're volcanic ejecta from long dormant flows, but their clustering, their reactive energy, and their eerie placement, always just below crest lines, as if hidden deliberately, suggest intention. Some desert wanderers claim visions when sleeping near them, dreams of machines underground, lights beneath the sand, and voices whispering in an unknown language. The Amargosa dunes shift with the wind, burying and revealing, but these stones stay fixed, waiting, listening, holding something, energy, memory, warning, that even the sun at high noon cannot fully erase. Nevada's deserts hum with more than heat. Beneath the dust, beneath the silence, lie the riddles of civilizations long erased. Petroglyphs that shimmer in moonlight, stones that whisper beneath the wind, mounds that breathe, caves that echo, and paths that lead to nowhere, but feel carved with purpose. These aren't tales from legend, they're real places you can walk today, photograph, touch, yet never fully understand. Science offers no final answer, history has no certainty, and still, they endure. Each ring, ridge, and carved wall waits quietly for someone to look again and ask, what have we forgotten? What meaning once burned here? You've wandered Nevada's most haunting, unsolved ancient mysteries, but they haven't finished speaking. So ask yourself, where do you stand, and what ancient ground lies below your feet? This has been Unmapped Mysteries. Subscribe to join us next time, and keep searching, because some truths aren't lost, they're hidden, waiting, just beyond the map.